Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Transatlantic Call-In Show. We're here, we're trans, we're taking questions, and I'm here, Luxander, with Ben. How are you doing today, Ben?
Doing all right. I'm excited for today's show. Excited for some callers that hopefully we'll be getting here really soon. Maybe I'm curious because I feel like some people are going to be divided a little bit by today's poll, which we'll get into later on.
Mhm.
But otherwise, it's doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty okay. I have some kombucha brewing. I've just become that kind of person this week. So, dude, the year that you turned 30 apparently is the year where you start doing a lot of new hobbies that are suddenly like you're becoming a health conscious person who has like way more hobbies. So
Yeah,
that's
I just
fun.
turned 32, 30 as well. Not 32. Just turned 30 as
Nice.
well. And no, and I agree with that. I am in my trans mask bodybuilding era because
Mm,
I'm like, we're gonna get my money's worth out of this testosterone, and I got free time, so
absolutely.
we're doing that right now. But you're right,
So
30 is a weird year.
it is so super weird. So before we go too much further, y'all, we have open lines. I think we might only have like one person. So if you want to call in and speak to our screener and potentially get on and chat with us, you can call 720-619-2288 and prevent us from having to just spend the entire show talking about working out. Because I also have been working out,
Yeah.
but I quit my gym membership, so now I'm just resistance training at home, calisthenics. It's the legit way to go, apparently.
I did wanna point something out in the side chat real quick because we had a, um, super chat come in talk about trolling the mods, and I am gonna say, like, if you're gonna troll the mods, like, super chats are the way to do it because you're allowed to troll the mods within reason with super chat. So
If you're gonna troll the mods,
I
why don't you
condone
just call in and troll us? Wouldn't
that.
that be more fun? So
Fair
yes,
enough.
we're gonna have a good show. We're trying up some new things. We're switching up the format a little bit. So I would like to discuss last week's poll really quick, look at your answers, and kind of respond to it ourselves. And we will read out next week's poll. But then after we read next week's poll, you all get to do your own little poll in the chat, and we'll discuss your answers live. But last week's poll asks, are you surprised that several prominent anti-trans conservative voices are named in a federal indictment alleging them to have been unwittingly made unregistered paid agents of the Russian government? I'm assuming you heard all about that with Tim Pool and all them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and I was not surprised.
No. I mean,
Not at all.
realistically, I don't think most of us were surprised that like our election is being influenced by or potentially being influenced by foreign agents who like are pushing all these really intensely conservative talking points, that it's in apparently it's in Putin's interest to push a bunch of anti-trans rhetoric because that seems like the focal point. Like we are the scapegoat group for
Mhm.
the I mean, we could call it a fascist takeover, but if Kamala wins, maybe not. But yeah, except that in the debate, Trump was like, these immigrants, like over and over again. And I found that very surprising because it's like, that's old news. That's old hat. What are you doing?
Yeah, it was funny. He was scrambling for sure to include as many scapegoats as possible in the debate.
Hmm.
But like it is kind of validating in a way to see like this indictment and the fact that like essentially in a indirect way it's saying that being anti-trans like is an anti-American stance. Like if we're taking America for what America's supposed to be,
Hmm.
um like it really is uh, not a pro-America position to oppose other Americans who are contributing to the economy and all these other things that they supposedly care about. Um, but somebody, I'm not surprised that like they were involved. I am surprised that there's anything being done about it. That's more what I'm surprised about.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's because I think media stuff is pretty tightly regulated. So if you are a media person and you are accepting foreign money, you have to declare
Mhm.
that you're receiving foreign money. Um, like I think it's like an FTC thing. So of course, it's always that thing where it only gets caught on a technicality, like back with Martin Shkreli, who was like jacked up the prices of HIV medications. Like he didn't get got for that. He got for lying to shareholders, I think. So it's always
Yeah.
like some other thing that's illegal, but not the original immoral thing that was actually done, because immoral things are not illegal, apparently. Anyway,
Yeah.
so that was last week's poll. Not surprising to me that 6% of people said, not surprising that only 6% of people said that they were surprised, given our audience. So this is also about the debate, referencing something that Trump said during the debate about like Kamala wants to give transgender aliens surgery in prison or whatever. So we will take that and turn it into a more serious question, asking, do you think those who rely on the state for medical care, including people in prison, should have their medically necessary gender transition care covered? I think that you had some interesting commentary ready for this one,
Yeah.
but we're going to skip
Are
that for now. Hold
we
on.
want to
We're
wait
skipping
and
it.
yeah, we have to save
Yes.
it. And
I forgot.
yeah.
This is how we're doing things now. But you in the chat, you people, you have the ability to say yes or no to this question in the chat there. So go ahead and post your answers. Do you think that those people should be able to have their medical care covered? Yes or no? And we will discuss that answer after we've taken a couple more calls. We are starting to get more
And
calls in. Yeah.
yeah, and if you want to engage with me on my potentially spicy take on this, also a great thing to call in about, if maybe it's something you want to call in sooner because the lines do fill up.
Mhm.
But if you think you have an interesting position on this, granted, I don't think we can take every single call on this topic because that would just take up the entire show. But one or two we might be able to tackle. So get your calls in.
Yes. And again, the number is 720-619-2288. We still have open lines, so you're welcome to call in, chat with us, and see what's up. Have some fun today. So with that all said, I think we're ready to move into the first caller. So let's see. Do either one of these look good to you? I was thinking maybe we'd take Caitlyn and then move on to Simon.
Yeah, we can do either. They're both really good calls, I think.
Cool. All right. So let's take Caitlyn. Faye, she pronouns from Oregon. Caitlyn, you are live on the line. How's it going?
Good. How about you?
I think we're doing super awesome and we're very ready to get into some excellent conversations today. So lay it on us. What do you want to talk about?
Yeah. So I think Luxander, you might have been here on another show where I asked the same question, but now that Dr. Ben's here, I thought that he might have some good insight.
For sure.
I'm starting prerequisite classes for nursing school soon, and I wanted to know getting advice or thoughts on how to best correct teachers and professors when talking about gender and sex and anatomy and such when they're not precise.
Yeah.
Because I recognize that I'm not the expert in this field, but I oftentimes know more about this one particular subject. And I even remember in my CNA class, I tried to correct the teacher about that after class one time when we were talking about, for men and women. And I said, we should probably be saying for people with penises and people with vaginas, because that's what we were actually talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. I think for a lot of like questions related to this, the nursing schools and the nursing system is a bit more ahead of where the medical side is at the moment. Because I know nursing programs tend to prioritize interpersonal issues and social issues more so than very academically focused. And that's, it depends on specialty too. Like pediatrics is very kind of at the forefront of activism. Same thing with psychiatry. Those two fields are very forward. Same thing with family medicine is more on those front lines. Things that are way more in the dark, things like surgical specialties, like a lot of internal medicine specialties, those things are more behind. So granted, when I kind of generalize, it can depend on who you're talking to in those fields. But I think in general, nurses are trained a little bit differently with regard to like approaching social issues. And so I find that a lot of time discussing with nurses can be easier than discussing with doctors about this particular issue, which could work well in your favor, especially if you approach
Okay.
issues less from a combative stance and more from a let's have a discussion about this. Like make it an educational point of like, I have a question about this, or like even frame it as like, how would I approach like a patient who like has this particular concern? Like bring them into the conversation, and that could be a good way to frame it as a group
to open their
discussion
mind.
and make you seem less antagonistic. But as far as like how nitty-gritty do we need to get on these topics, there are plenty of times where I'm just very happy to not bring it up, because it's not, calling it out is not always relevant in that particular setting. And especially as we're seeing a transition, if you will, of language and how we're using language, people aren't going to be perfect in how they communicate every issue. And I think people are often trying, and sometimes, you know, it slips out that they say men and women when they really mean pregnant people. And I think it's okay sometimes to point it out, but I think we need to show some grace to people and not like harp on it every single time when we know that like they're trying, or we know that there's some baggage that people have in the way they talk that just is really hard to overcome. And so I think it's important to bring it up in cases where we're talking about like patient care, or we're talking about like modifying public policy or modifying guidelines, like where we are delineating between different people who should receive access, or how we should engage with those people. But if it's a side comment of like, oh, males have this anatomy, like, yeah, there's a lot of gray area where no, not all males have that anatomy, but in an anatomy class, we don't always need to have that debate, because it's not really changing where we're going from there. So I would say pick your battles wisely, and I don't mean that to shut down discussion related to that. But just because it, like, we need to make sure that when we're having those battles, it's with purpose and not just to be antagonistic, if that makes sense.
Luxander,
do you have
something? Or?
Additional thoughts?
I think I've already fielded this question before, and
you
like,
did.
Obviously, I don't have the expertise of being in the field, so you know, I think pick your battles is definitely something that we have to be conscientious of, and I think it also sort of depends on like how patient oriented the subject matter is. Like if we're discussing like how to speak to patients, definitely I think it's important to weigh in and like, again, like, you know, in Oregon where people travel to get trans healthcare at OHSU, like we should be striving to be at the top as far as like the standard for trans affirming care. But yeah, I think I don't really have a lot to add other than that.
Yeah, and I think one point I do want to add is probably the best place to, unless of course there's a professor saying something completely inappropriate, like those, that would be a time where you do talk to the professor like in person outside of class. Like don't like make a big deal of it like during the class period, but after class you can usually walk up to the professor and say, hey, like, can I just give some in-person feedback about this, and then go from there. If it's something small, like if a PowerPoint said women when related to pregnancy care and didn't use full inclusive language, that's something you could include in your written feedback. Like after the course is done, they often give you like a post-course feedback thing, and then you put in like comments of, hey, like I think it would improve the course to make some of the PowerPoint language more inclusive, and like here's how you could do it. Like saying pregnant people instead of women in this case. Like use those feedback opportunities to include some of those more nitpicky points, because that's specifically when they're asking for it. But then of course, like I said, if they're being overtly offensive, then that might be more appropriate for even like an email or an in-person conversation.
I do want to add to that, I would not recommend calling out during the class, because professors in general are like, I mean, and it's true of anything, like, with this format where we're debating people, ultimately the goal is not really to change the mind of the person that we are debating with, because in a public forum, you
Right.
are like, I can't remember the word for it, but like you are entrenched in your opinion and there's like a vested interest in not changing your mind publicly. So for a professor like who is the authority in the classroom, who is also subject to that same effect of, having an audience, needing to seem correct, being resistant to changing their opinion on things. Generally, I would suggest like, yeah, if you can, if it is like something that's pressing, doing the in-person or an email, something where they are not feeling like the pressure of the whole room looking at them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even like framing it ahead of time so they can prepare for that discussion. Like, hey, would it be okay if I gave you some feedback either in person or like frame it so that they're prepared and like not caught off guard, and you can have a discussion that maybe they're more receptive to changing. If they know like, hey, this is some feedback. Probably do it in that way. That's at least how I would probably handle it.
Okay. Yeah, I just remember it's kind of my own issue, because I can't assume. I mean, I know it's just little things like that is what end up making people ignorant when they hear these things over and over again in, fourth grade biology, which a lot of the anti-trans people will bring up. But it's because they never learned more than that. And I mean, I guess in nursing school, you'd hope that it's much more education. But, I've worked with some nurses already that, it's rare, but worked with some coworkers who are not very forward thinking and very kind. So,
I mean with that too, like the way the education has changed over the years, that wasn't something that was a priority like several years ago. And so if you have nurses that are that have been working for a while, like they might not have had that same type of education that you're about to get. So I do think that it probably has changed for like you entering. But I don't think a lot of people are maliciously like trying to be uninformed, at least like giving people the benefit of the doubt. I feel like a lot of nurses especially don't want to be that person. I think they went through at a time when that information wasn't as accessible to them in their educational program. Hopefully they're taking initiative now to learn about it. But I think hopefully some of them are
and
trying.
I just want to advocate for that, and do it appropriately in, before I'm actually in those kind of positions of power. Who knows where
definitely.
like you mentioned specialties. For now, I'm just doing, just general. I mean, right now it's just prereq classes and it's online, so there won't really be much. But I remember one show, someone, I think it was Matt actually, talked about nutrition, and like one of my classes, the nutrition class. So, anyway, I'm looking forward to the show. So thank you so much for having my call.
Thank you for calling in, Caitlyn. We appreciate it. I'm glad you got to chat with Dr. Ben directly, since y'all share the field. And we hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah. Oh, also, I know Arden's not on, unfortunately, but she mispronounced my last name last time I gave a super chat. So I was hoping to let her know, but I'll see her in another 10 minutes.
What is it? I'm right here. What is it?
Oh, you are? Oh. So it's proper pronunciation is Adair. It's Cajun French, but Hebert is fine, but you added an R and made it Herbert.
Oh. Well, thank you for that note.
Well, thank you.
There you go.
Thank you for correcting us, so now we can read your
No problem. It's so common. So, yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Caitlyn. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
All right. So, really quick, before we take our next caller, first of all, have you hit the like button? It's quick, it's easy, it's free. It's one of the best ways that you can support the live show while it's live. Thank you very much. And also, don't forget to subscribe. Click the bell if you want notifications for when we're going live. And you can get your $5 super chats in. We will read $5 super chats, and we have a fun game toward the end of the stream. I will explain that in a little bit, but you will get the chance to vote for Team Lux or Team Ben. Hashtag Team Lux, hashtag Team Ben. The loser has to do a punishment. We will get into that later. And this is the end of the week, basically, for the line. But next week, starting on Sunday, we will have the Sunday show with Eve Was Framed and Forrest Valkai at 2 p.m. Central Time. And then later in the evening, we've got like the After Dark show or whatever it's called, also with Forrest Valkai and Aaron Adair. That's at 7 p.m. 6 p.m. is the rest of the times for most of the other shows, though. So Monday, 6 p.m., Forrest Valkai and Erika Gibbon on Skep Talk. We've got Shannon Q and Alyssa Ljub on Chewed Gum on Tuesday. Wednesday, we've got Matt Dillahunty and Jimmy Snow on The Hang Up. And of course, on your Thursdays, 2 p.m. Central Time, I am not going to be here next week. So we've got Josie and Ben for your Takis next week. I know we haven't had Josie on for a minute and we're all missing her terribly. So don't forget to hit the like button, all that jazz. We appreciate y'all. And don't forget to respond to this week's poll. And we'll discuss your answers here in a little bit. So now let's move into our next caller. So I think let's go ahead and take Simon, he, him pronouns from Illinois. Simon, you are live on the line. How's it going?
Hi, it's good. I'm a little bit nervous, so if I sound a little shaky, I apologize.
That's okay. I think we'll live. So what do you want to talk about today?
Yeah, so first off, I'm a trans man, and I wanted to call in asking if y'all think that inclusive language surrounding reproductive rights and abortion rights are excluding women or erasing women. And as a trans man, I've been told that my experience is like erasing women in these spaces. So I just wanted to hear y'all's opinion on that.
Yeah, my answer is no. My answer
is
like
the short
flat,
answer.
Yeah, it's a flat no. No, it is not erasing women. And it's an argument we see, especially by a lot of transphobes, which is very interesting, and by a lot of trans women. And I think Lex and I got into this discussion a bit the last time we were on together about like male privilege and like the fact that trans people like to fight each other on this issue about if trans men deserve like any part of this discussion. And yeah, I don't think it detracts at all from women because, I mean, the heart of the issue is reproductive rights for people who can get pregnant. And so anybody who can get pregnant is at risk for any people, like any possibility of these rights being taken away. Anybody that can get pregnant could have poor health outcomes from being denied access to this care. And so anybody with the ability to get pregnant should be part of this conversation, and it does not detract from anybody else who has the ability to get pregnant. So there's my short and sweet answer.
Yeah, I mean, definitely agreed. Like, I think it's more dangerous. Like, even if I were to grant that using this language somehow erases women, even though I think most people, when they think of pregnancy, think of women. So I'm not really sure how it's possible to box women out of this conversation. But like, the real danger that happens is that trans men are, it's not just that they're excluded from the conversation, it's that they also are denied medical care. If you create this environment where, you know, pregnancy is for women, abortion is for women, then when a trans man goes into a gynecological office like Robert Eads did, he will be denied care for what turns out to be metastatic ovarian cancer and then die from that because, you know, like 10 doctors were just like, well, whatever, it'll scare the women if you're in the waiting room, or maybe this will teach you, like, if you were really a man, you wouldn't have ovarian cancer. Like, the tangible result is that like trans men and masculine non-binary people with the associated organs here are just going to not get health care, whether it's because they choose not to or because they're being denied actively. So, I mean, if we're comparing, you know, people's experiences here, I don't think that it's like women are being functionally erased from this conversation. And then there's also the side of this where women who have had hysterectomy or women who are infertile, like those women experience an othering of their own when there's this assumption, like this association between like women and childbirth, that they feel like they're less of a woman and like men too. Like when men discover that they are infertile, they're like, I'm less of a man. I'm not a real man anymore. I've lost my virility. And so I just personally think that on every possible angle, it is better to just say like, if you're capable of getting pregnant, you should get this healthcare. If you have a cervix, you should get a pap smear. Um, and I don't understand really the perspective of the whole like women, I'm being erased. Like, oh my God, you are the dominant group in this conversation. Can you chill out, JK Rowling, please?
Yeah, and with all of that too, there are different risks with people who are, especially people who are using testosterone and who have the ability to get pregnant. And there's a lot of misunderstanding, not only within the trans community, but within the medical community too, about what conversations you need to have with people who are on HRT and either want to get pregnant or don't want to get pregnant, because you're put in this position where you either have to stop your HRT to get pregnant, or you have to find a way to not get pregnant. And so that kind of limits your options. And I did a presentation for like my residency recently about contraception for trans men and trans masculine people. And people don't always understand the nuances of carrying a pregnancy while presenting masculine and how that impacts your living in society, especially as you become visibly pregnant. It can be very dangerous for a lot of people in that situation. Because number one, you're not able to take your HRT, so you could have psychological effects, physical effects, just from not being able to access that part of your healthcare. But then, of course, violent encounters, like with domestic violence, like publicly with violence, just for like, I don't know if any of you, I'm sure Lux probably saw this, but the man who was very publicly, like openly, like pregnant and trans, and how much hatred he got on the internet for carrying a pregnancy from both sides. Like there were people who were trans that were making comments, or primarily people who are transphobes that were making comments. Like imagine trying to use the men's bathroom while being visibly pregnant. Like these are very potentially dangerous situations for someone to be in. And imagine you're in that situation and you had no idea you could be, because you weren't told that you could get pregnant while on testosterone. Like there are a lot of people that don't know. And I think now people are doing a better job at counseling before giving HRT, like, hey, this is still a possibility. You still need contraception if you're going to be undergoing activities that could get you pregnant, and you need to watch out for this. And so you need to make sure either you have access to abortion or access to contraception, or both. And the other factor along with that is, like, I mean, the whole contraception thing. Like there's some nuance with hormonally based contraception and the fear of, is this going to impact my transition? The data is suggesting, like right now, the data is suggesting it won't. Even an estrogen-based birth control should not impact your transition. But that's something that worries people. And what is the right option for contraception? It can be a very sticky situation, and a lot of points that we just don't talk about frequently. And even if someone gets access to healthcare, they might not know these details. And so for all of these reasons, I think including everybody is the only right way to have these conversations so that nobody gets missed, for the same reasons that Lux had just described.
Thank you so much. I agree with everything y'all said. Real quick, I was part of an abortion rights group a couple of years ago for a few months, and I would, state openly, like, hey, let's include non-binary people, trans people who can also get pregnant. And I was often like accused of erasing women, like I said. And it ended with me removing myself from that organization, myself and like 6 other like college students. We stopped interacting with them, which means we stopped going to protests. We stopped, making signs and doing things around campus. But it was because they were so set on, their words specifically were, the abortion ban is specifically targeting women and girls, like it's not targeting trans people somehow, which I don't see how that made any sense. But that was their argument. And I'm just curious too, like, was it worth me trying to argue with them and sit down with them and have conversations like, hey, we just need some inclusive language, if they weren't even going to listen. And then, later I had to just leave the organization entirely,
I mean, sometimes you just are not in community with people who have the same values as you at the end of the day. And at the end of the day,
Mhm.
this value is being willing to like listen and be open to correction or be open to
Mhm.
expanding the activism. Because, like, on principle, I don't necessarily disagree that the purpose of these laws is to target and restrict women. Like, that probably most conservatives aren't thinking about trans men in, when they're making these
Mhm.
plans and all this. For the last 50 years, the chipping away at Roe v. Wade has been primarily an attempt to control and restrict women. And that also doesn't change the fact that trans men and non-binary people are harmed by it and are harmed more generally by the broader rhetoric here. So, like, I can understand the initial point, but you can also do things like say women and anyone who can get pregnant. Like, it's
Mhm.
probably not going to fit on the banner as easily. But if it's like part of your mission statement, you don't have to necessarily switch off like women and
Mhm.
breastfeeding parents or women and people with cervixes. I think that that's something that gets missed here too, is that we can add rather than totally change the rhetoric in a way that makes everybody feel included. Like, we can accommodate the whole, yes, this is a specific targeted attack on women that has the side effect of also harming trans men, um, and acknowledge that while also acknowledging that trans men are harmed by this. And like, let's not pretend that they aren't.
Mhm.
And I
Okay,
think a lot of
thank you
the
so much.
problem with
Oh, sorry.
this, well, real quick, just like I think a lot of the problem here too is just it's the implicit bias that trans men are still women. And I think that's part of why it's so hard for people to separate it, because society in general doesn't care a whole lot about trans men as a separate identity because we're just lumped in with women still. And
Mhm.
I do think, it was worth, I think it was probably worth having the discussion at least to see if they would listen to that point, especially if it's a group that is publicly sharing opinions. Um, but, but yeah, and I don't know if either of you have thoughts about, I know some organizations are using like Women Plus or something to where you can shorten it a bit more. Which like, it's like, I don't know how I feel about like that specific term, but
Mhm.
I think there's some work to be done, and maybe people can get creative with how they include different groups and make everyone at least less angry with each other about it. I don't know. People are weird.
Yeah. I would say, I think that there are definitely issues with like the women plus or like women asterisk or however that would be put together.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, it's more brief, but I think it does fall into that same trap that you were mentioning of like trans men and non-binary people assigned
Mhm.
female are like just women, but a little weird,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of us kind of buck
Yeah.
against that sensation.
Mhm.
Like it's weird too because yeah, like in so many ways we are politically associated with women because we are affected by the kind of policies that they are affected by, and yet we stand apart from them and we want to be distinguished from them. So it is kind of a weird place to be, or like yeah, it doesn't fit easily on a slogan because it turns out human experience is nuanced and it doesn't fit on a little banner or in a little
Yeah.
hashtag that easily. So we're just kind of all trying to figure it out and do the best we can. And I think the best we can do is like acknowledge other people's unique hardships, and in return
Mhm.
I think it's reasonable to expect that our unique hardships be at least acknowledged, and then, like,
Yeah.
especially if we are doing the work. Like, if you are in a group that's fighting for the right to abortion, there is no reasonable, like, oh no, we're just going to ignore your issue for now. Like, no, I'm here doing the work. I'm trying to help you. You need to help me. I think that expecting that reciprocity is totally fine, and that asking for it is reasonable. And for people to deny you that is them being unreasonable. And through that unkindness, I think terminating your relationship with them is a reasonable response as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you guys so much. I know you'll have some more calls to get to. Yeah, thank you a lot for your feedback. This is just stuff I think about all the time, especially since I had to leave that group. It just like, it boils my blood still thinking about it. I wanted to get y'all's insight, and I agree with everything y'all said. So thank you.
Yeah, we appreciate you calling, and I'm glad that you have some comrades with those other people who also left the group with you. And maybe you all can do your own little, like, guess what? I'm gonna go do my own group with hookers and blackjack or whatever. Little Futurama reference for everybody there. An ancient Futurama reference, actually. But thank you, Simon. We really appreciate you calling, and we hope you have a good rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Bye. Okay. If do you have any further commentary on that one? Because I'm prepared to just roll right into the next caller.
No, let's do it.
Let's go. Okay, so let's just take them in order, I suppose. We've got Gabe from Texas has a question specifically for Dr. Ben. Gabe, you are live on the line. What's up?
Hi, I wanted to ask how many Adams and Eves were at the beginning? Kind of like how many males and females were at the beginning? Like how the first Homo sapiens. I don't know if that's a proper question.
Yeah, I know you're specifically asking me, and I'm going to give you a very honest answer of I don't know. I don't know how many people were the first to exist and propagate our species. This honestly might be more of a Forrest and Erika question, which I don't know if you heard the announcements earlier, but they're going to be on Skep Talk this week. So maybe because I know they know a lot about evolution and that stuff, but I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Is there is there a particular reason why this? Well, is there a particular reason why this point was a question? Is this, are you using this point in argument or just curiosity?
I'm just trying to prepare for a conversation I'm going to have with a Catholic. I'm trying to do my own debates as well, so I don't know if this is going to come up. So I'm trying to prepare myself because we're going to talk about evolution.
Yeah, I think. I think. I mean, and I'll let Lux talk as well. But I think this would be a great topic for Forrest and Erika on Tuesday, or is it Monday? Monday.
Yeah, but I will say, like, there used to be like a bunch of different humanoid species, and like we also interbred with like the Neanderthals. So like I think there are a decent number of Homo sapiens who have like 15% Neanderthal DNA still. So when we're looking at species populations, there are probably going to be like, I would say at the minimum, like thousands in order to have enough genetic variation to not create like the problems that start to come up with inbreeding, basically. So yeah, like there was some interbreeding with other humanoid species, but as far as your question of like how many, I would say I would be surprised if there were ever fewer than thousands of Homo sapiens across whatever landmass we were populating at the time. But yeah, anthropology is an interest of mine, but not something that I'm an expert in. So I don't want to speak with too much confidence, especially since we have so many excellent professionals associated with the network here.
Okay. All right. I guess, well, thank you very much anyway for taking my call.
Yeah, we appreciate you, Gabe. Have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks for calling in. Sorry you waited for that answer from us.
Sorry.
No, but thank you for speaking with me. I appreciate you talking to me. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Yeah, I'm an expert in some things, but that's not one of them, unfortunately.
Yeah, wish I could be more helpful, but I hope you're able to get that answered because it is an interesting question. So maybe I'll tune in
Yeah,
on Monday and see if they answer it.
yeah, that is. I really would love to get on and have a chat with Forrest. He just seems so interesting, and it's a crime that I'm only on the trans channel.
I mean, maybe we can poke some of the people in charge of like scheduling things.
It's true. Maybe in November though, because I'm so friggin' busy right now. Okay, so we're gonna pause real quick to say, first of all, hit the like button if you haven't already. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Hit the subscribe button too if you want to. But more importantly, those of you who responded to our chat poll, which is echoing the broader poll that we have on our community page, and you can always go check out the community page and vote there, and you can leave your little comments in the comments, and we do read through those and kind of see what's the general vibe. But regarding people who are dependent on the state, such as those who are in prison, should they be receiving gender affirming care effectively? Like, should the state be covering that for them? So, what was the poll? I saw it. Okay, so 84% of people said yes, 15% said no, and I'll be really interested to see what those no's say in the community tab. But Ben,
I do have
why don't you lay it
results
on us?
if you want to know about the community tab.
Oh yeah, what's the
Yeah,
community tab looking
show
like?
us the results.
It's pretty
Show
similar.
us.
It's 80-20. So it's a
Okay.
very similar distribution.
Okay. I'm curious to see what those what those naysayers what their justifications are. But go ahead, Dr. Ben, you've got some commentary?
Yeah, it's very nuanced, and I am like I'm separating out the circumstances because I know the whole prompt was related to the specific commentary that people, specifically like illegal immigrants, were like getting gender affirming surgeries in jail, like something weird. And like I won't belabor like that specific wording of everything, but I do think it's important to separate out the different forms of gender affirming care, and with that separating out like the urgency of each of those types of care, and then also factoring in logistics and how this would happen. And so as I feel like parts of what I'm going to say like could be polarizing, but that's why I'm giving you the full context of this. And in short, the answer should be yes. Yes, people should get gender affirming care while incarcerated or while in situations where they're depending on the state. I do think that there are different ways we need to go about this depending on specifically what we're trying to do, and how we're going to be able to do that for them. And the key phrase here, which we had been careful of including, is medically necessary. And so that brings up kind of the debate of what is medical necessity? How do we determine medical necessity? And so things like hormones, things like heaven forbid, if you're talking about juvenile detentions, like puberty blockers, like certain things like that are medical therapies, I think are much easier to give access to everybody in those circumstances. So that's something that you really wouldn't need to limit a whole lot, because it'd be logistically easy to provide everybody with that. Where it gets a little bit sticky is related to like surgical management. I do think that, especially for people, it can be like in their safety interest to provide them with some surgical care while in those circumstances. I think that there needs to be some more individualized like risk stratification as far as what benefits are like, is this person going to receive from this treatment? Like, what is it going to improve in their quality of life? How urgently does this need to be done? Do we need to do this like in the next year or so? Is this something that we could consider like putting them on a wait list for a certain amount of time? And that's something that would need to be considered. If somebody is trans and incarcerated in a place that is unsafe for them, and receiving surgical transition would keep them safer and make it easier to move them to an appropriate facility for their gender, I think that that's something that could be considered more urgently medically necessary. And that could move somebody up on the wait list if we developed some way of objectively saying, like, this is going to improve this person's quality of life, we need to prioritize this care for them. I think that that's reasonable. More questions come up with, like, how are we, like, funding this stuff? And I don't know. That I'm not good at economics, so I'm just focusing on the medical necessity. If it's somebody who wants to have that type of care, but don't meet whatever criteria for a more urgent intervention, I do think that there could be some kind of wait list put in place where they could, like, I don't know how long it'd be, probably be several years down the line to get that care. And we'd have to really think of what things would be covered and in what cases, like, would informed consent care be covered, or would, like, you have to meet certain medical criteria? That's something that would have to be, like, sifted through as well. And so essentially I'm getting to, this is a very complicated situation of how this would happen. And it's a very roundabout way of saying, yes, I think people should have care, but I think that it's very difficult to do this in the right way, and it would take a whole reworking of our healthcare system to make it possible. And I'm in favor of reworking our entire healthcare system. But in reworking it to that extent, it would take a lot of making sure people didn't lose access, like, while we were doing this whole shift. But that's kind of like, idealistically, I would just give everybody everything that they needed. But I understand that realistically, that's not super possible. So I hope people aren't going to take my stance as, like, being super, like, gatekeepy. But that's kind of where I see the problems with the scenario.
Yeah, and I would say, like, I think that, like, there's no question whether hormones should be provided, because you are on this medication. It can be disruptive. It can cause issues to just, like, stop the medication suddenly. Like, I think that that's, like, a pretty easy, there's no question about that. And, like, I saw someone in chat just a minute ago being like, well, why should prisoners get free medical care when everybody else has to pay for it? Like, that's like asking, why should prisoners get free food while everybody else has to pay for it? Like, because they're,
and again, I think everybody should get free healthcare. So
yeah, the position that we have is that everybody should get free healthcare anyway. But, like, they're being forcibly detained, like, because they were born in a country where crime is arbitrarily determined by these people who are getting paid by the prison people to make things illegal so that they can have more people doing labor in the prisons, because slavery is illegal except as punishment for a crime. Yeah, like, I think, and, like, I personally think, and this is just a personal opinion, I'm not saying this is something I would make policy based off of. By the way, if you're being annoying in the chat, call us. There's a link in the description, or the number is in the description. We haven't had any spicy callers today, and I would love to get one in. Please join the queue. Anyway, so yeah, I would not want to personally go through any bottom surgery healing, or even really top surgery healing. I've heard that breast augmentation is, like, not that bad, as far as the gamut of surgery recoveries are concerned. But I just can't imagine being, like, being a trans woman in a female prison and having to, like, dilate. That sounds like a nightmare situation.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying, like, we shouldn't provide that if it is, like, yeah, if it would mean that woman gets to be in a women's prison, then yes, we should expedite that, because her being in a men's prison is, like, degrading and dangerous. But yeah, and it's like, there is that spicy question of what is medically necessary, who's determining this. Cis people already have created this, like, pile of gatekeeping nonsense where you have to be clinically distressed and get the gender dysphoria diagnosis in order to receive medical care. We're kind of wiggling that around a little bit with the informed consent stuff, but like technically speaking, you have to be like clinically upset and dysfunctional from your gender dysphoria in order to get the diagnosis and get the medical care. So yeah, and I think that all of this would be much easier to navigate if we did not have insurance companies and if we did not have all of this, trying to gatekeep who gets what care and who gets paid whatever, whose stuff gets paid for or not. So anyway, yeah, the community tab is open for everybody to put their little comments, and we will read them. And not me, but Josie and Ben will be here next week to read some
And
of
you
your
can
comments.
call,
And you can
or
call.
call in. You can call in
OMG.
today and argue with us about it if you think something different.
True.
Now's your chance.
So one more thing before we move on. If you didn't know, there's a competition. So not only will we read your $5 super chats, $5 or more at the end of the show, but also with your super chat, you can vote hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Ben, Team Dr. Ben, whatever you want to put in there. And the loser, the one who gets the fewest votes, will have to defend an indefensible but silly position. That's the thing that we're running with right now for the competition. There is a poll right now in the chat where you can vote for which of 3 silly but indefensible positions that you would like us to run with at the end. We've got like a nice list going, but you can vote on those 3 options today and then get your super chats in to figure out who's going to have to deliver this indefensible position here at the end of the show. So with that all said, let's move on to our next caller. We've got Luther, who uses they, them pronouns from New England. Luther, you are live on the line. How's it going?
Hi, it's going okay.
Awesome. What do you want to talk to us about today?
Well, it's pertaining to the bathroom question, and I don't know if this is even really relevant anymore because it seems like it's lost a bit of momentum in the U.S. at least, but we'll see how things go because of the upcoming election. But in response to the, we'll just have bathrooms, restricted to the whatever's on your ID or gender, your sign of birth, etc. I've noticed a common response, and you guys have used this response on the show, which is, okay, well, how would you enforce this, right? It's like, what are you going to do? Like, you have to report to the bathroom bouncer? And it's like, yeah, of course not. That's absurd. But there is a response to that, and I'm kind of surprised that I've never heard any of the transphobes offer this, because it seems to me disturbingly feasible, and that's turnstiles. So in Germany, at highway rest stops, at least the ones that I visited, they have like these subway turnstiles outside of bathrooms, and not as a gender thing. It's just you have to put in €1 to get in, and then you get a voucher that's worth €1 because they want you to spend money at the convenience store, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought, it's like, okay, well, what if they answered, it's like, well, we'll just put the turnstiles outside of the women's restroom, and instead of having to put money in, you have to put in your state-issued ID. And these scanners already exist. They have them in a lot of airports now. I've been seeing them, and I'm just thinking, it's like, okay, well, that could actually work, because you have to put in your state-issued ID, and they could just, it's like, all right, well, what if you had your gender marker change? Well, they could just do what Lux, you've talked about, Kansas is doing, which is reverting all changes and preventing new changes. And then it's like, okay, well, then what if you have an out-of-state ID from a state that does still allow gender marker changes, which is most of them? And it's like, well, in that case, the system would be designed to just reject it entirely. It's like, oh, you're from a state that allows this. It's like they don't have direct access to the database, where it's like, okay, so they can't change it. It's like, all right, well, fuck you, you don't get to pee today. And I don't really know specifically how to counter that, because that is an answer to the enforcement question. It's like, yeah, it would be expensive, but if they could muster the political will, it would actually be something that they could do. And I'm just wondering, like, how you counter that rhetorically, because obviously, legislatively that's a whole different story. But just as a matter of just as a matter of rhetoric, how would you counter this?
I think the first problem that I can think of that, I mean, well, let's say the most compelling problem is, let's say there's like a mom traveling with her young son or a dad traveling with his young daughter. That girl, like that daughter, doesn't have a state issued ID. So how does she get into the bathroom? Do we have like a special like voucher thing for children? Yeah, this is an interesting point, and how dare you give them the idea? But uh, yeah,
I
like the
know,
issue
right? But
of
that's the thing. It's like,
children.
oh no, I don't want to give them ideas. But at the same time, I'm kind of surprised that I've never heard this before. So yeah.
Yeah,
Sorry,
and I mean,
I didn't mean
another
to
question
interrupt.
is like, who's going to pay for this? Is this government subsidized, or is there an expectation that every corner convenience store with like owned by a guy with a thick Indian accent is gonna have to like fork over like a couple $1,000s for this? You would genuinely be better off at that point, like remodeling the bathrooms to be gender neutral with full like doors that go all the way down and all the way up. Um, yeah, I think the issue of children is the most obvious issue, like people who don't have an ID, and like, what if you are an immigrant? Are we just going to now have people pissing on the sidewalk? Are we going to have little kids peeing themselves in the middle of the convenience store? Um, it seems like, and I mean, and I'm not like criticizing your idea here. This is fitting well into the whole rest of the fascist picture of like increased surveillance and policing and crackdown and all this. But it's like a ridiculous, impossible to enforce overreach. Um, that like it's like part of, I think part of the purpose of these laws being so broadly written. Like the law in Kansas um, does not create a specific punishment for using this restroom, and it doesn't specify how we're going to test who needs to go in which one. And I think ultimately the reason for that is so that it's up to the discretion of the officers or whomever to enforce this against whoever they want to. Ultimately, is like how this ends up working. So I wonder if it would even be in the interest of this deeply conservative ideology to create this, because this would actually work to enforce what they want to enforce. But I think what they actually want to do is incarcerate people, you know?
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point, because you're right. It's not about the enforcement of the laws as they're written. It's about like indirect control and getting people to self-police and live in fear and all of that. Yeah, and it's like the question of whether they would actually be able to muster the political will to put in this actual enforcement mechanism that is kind of a quote solution to the question, to the problem, that's not actually the problem in the first place. And you're right. It would, like, if they actually tried to go down that road, it would end up with a pretty politically brittle situation, because yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, as the other issues, like, oh, little kids, have to pee themselves, like, kind of thing, is as those pile up, that would erode um their hold on things. But
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I'm
And it would create other
still though, I'm
crimes. Because, like, I
Yeah.
mean, when you
yeah,
have this
exactly, yeah.
situation where, like,
Yeah.
homeless people have to purchase something in order to be able to use the bathroom at the Starbucks. So there's no public restrooms. They have to buy something, but they don't have any money. Then they just pee on the sidewalk. And then you have all these people super pissed off about, like, oh my God, all these homeless people, all these vagrants, they're, not respecting our public spaces by taking a dump in the bush. And it's like, yeah, well, and like, to be clear, also, like, peeing in public is a sex crime in a lot of places. So,
Right.
it just creates more crime in other ways. But of course, again, the conservatives are never thinking this many steps ahead.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, right. But that's, yeah, because on the other hand, they, like, you're right, that does create these knock-on effects, but they're not going to solve that by reversing the original policy, which was ridiculous in the first place. They're just going to keep ratcheting down and down and down, like just shoving, like you said, it's just shoving homeless people out of city centers and all of that. Like they're just going to keep making it worse if they're allowed to.
Yeah. Do you want to pitch in anything on this, Ben?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Lux's position here. I think this creates so many problems. And, part of the conservative agenda on this is to be able to imprison more people. Like with the whole bathroom thing and just with the homelessness example, they're using a lot of kind of roundabout ways to get them off the streets by finding more reasons to incarcerate them. And that is very easily something that, they're trying to work on with trans people. So, yeah, I do think it's something that they could do, unfortunately. But we could just get to a better neutral place of just not having gendered bathrooms and just have doors that go all the way to the floor. Like make every stall lock. Like just make all individual stalls, and then we don't have to worry about any of this nonsense anymore. Like,
I completely agree
right
on
there.
that. Yeah. It's cheaper too because they wouldn't need to have as many. What is that old joke where it's like gender is a scam perpetrated by bathroom salespeople to sell more bathrooms? Right? Yeah.
Just finish the walls. Just finish out the walls. It wouldn't require a whole lot to modify those bathrooms. So.
Yeah. So I guess it's like why I haven't heard that option is because it's not really about that at all. That's not really the purpose
they don't care.
of it anyway.
That's not what they want.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like this kind of stuff, it just melts my brain. It doesn't make sense. I'm just like, how do we counter this? And it's like, well, there are various ways, and I'm doing my best to learn.
Yeah, and this is already kind of an existing issue with. Actually, this did happen in a library in like Wichita, Kansas, I think, that a woman who was escorting her adult son, who was like very autistic or something along those lines, like mentally. What is the correct term we're using nowadays? Like mentally deficit.
Requires higher social support.
Yes, requiring higher social support. So her son, which requires higher social support, like they were kicked out of a library bathroom because some woman complained, and it's like, okay, well, I need to, because she was escorting him into the women's restroom, which I think would be the safer option for both of them. So like for her, as like the person with like who doesn't need the social support is entering the space that she is most comfortable with, and her son, who is not a risk to anyone, is like being kicked out. I'm not sure what the specific diagnosis was in that case, but like this is already an issue, and it's like, where's the cutoff? Can your 6-year-old son go into the women's restroom with you, or do you have to send him in there alone? Like, I don't know. There are so many obvious problems with this already, without the addition of like, now I need to pay $20 for a state ID in order to be able to access public spaces, and like, oh, if my state allows people to change their ID, can I just not go pee at all in any state? Like if I'm traveling across the country, I'm just gonna have to bring a bottle with me. Anyway, that's a very interesting question though, Luther.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you're right. It's completely absurd. And I did hear about that case. And yeah, I guess it's just like, as ever, a lot of it is a matter of conservatives not thinking through the implications of the policies for which they advocate. So anyway, thanks.
Yeah, we appreciate your call, Luther. If you don't have anything else to add, I think that we're gonna scooch along, but we really appreciate you calling.
Yeah, thanks very much.
All right, have a good rest of your day, Luther. Bye.
Bye.
I love how callers mirror my language. So like even a
Yeah.
presumably like cis het guy will be like bye, and I'm like yes. I don't know why,
I
but it
love
tickles
it.
me so much. It's good stuff. Don't forget, everybody, if you have problems with what we're saying in the chat there, the lines are still open. You can call in. We only have like 2 callers on the line right now, and I would absolutely love to get some serious disagreement in before the end of the show today. But if you're a cool person who doesn't have any qualms in the chat, feel free to drop your super chats, $5 or more. We will read them out at the end. Hit the like button, vote hashtag team Lux or hashtag team Ben in your super chats to try to make one of us lose and do the punishment at the end of the show. So we're having a fun time. With that all said, let's see. We've got Quinn next on the line. He, they pronouns from Arizona. Quinn, you're live on the line. What do you got for us today?
Hi. This is my first time calling. Hi.
Welcome.
I had a question about like that like the way people say I am X or Y. I have gender dysphoria. I have a diagnosis, and I've been trying to explore things for several years. I'm 25. Like for context, like this is based on my experience, but I didn't have any inkling of being trans until I was an adult after graduating college and after I had a kid. And I know that there are other adults who go through it too, but even while I've been seeing my gender therapist and exploring, I don't know that I like or want things until suddenly I try them. I actually usually think I won't like it, and then I do. But I still have no sense of like, I am a trans guy. I don't know. I just know that like I want to transition to a more masculine direction. So I'm just like wondering how does one feel that I am sensation, and what is it? Like if anyone has talked about that in books or anything. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I think, Ben, that you're probably going to have an easier time answering this question than
I don't know.
me.
I don't know. I feel like this question is a bit more geared to you, but I'm happy to take a crack at it first, and then you can fill in.
I'll follow
So it was a journey for me to eventually land on a label of trans man. And I think everybody has their own kind of process to self-discovery, if you will. And like, I don't think anybody I've met that I've heard a story from has like instantaneously landed on I'm a binary trans man or binary trans woman. I think a lot of people like don't start off with the feeling of, oh, I'm absolutely this. I'm sure there are probably some people out there who have had those experiences, but mine was definitely a gradual search for identity of, I think, as probably a similar place to where you're at, where I'm like, I know I'm not this. I know I'm not what I was assigned. And then I just kind of tried different things, trying to see if anything stuck. And I was really scared at first to try things like cutting my hair or changing my aesthetic or anything like that, because I had just known one thing and I didn't know how it would look on me. It was like, it takes a while for hair to grow back. It's like, what if it looks bad? And for me, it took a lot of allowing myself the freedom to kind of go against what I was told I had to be. And a lot of it was getting over my own baggage with my conservative Christian upbringing. But part of it, I got to a place of like not really caring about what anybody else is thinking. And I know that's kind of a cliche in a lot of ways, but being able to say like, if I have this one life to live, like if I could choose anything in the world to be or anything in the world to look like or any decision to make, which one would I do? If I didn't have to think about anybody else, or any money or anything like that. Like, what decision would I make? And like, I wanted to have short hair. I wanted to dress like a man. I wanted to live like a man. And I did go through periods of, I kind of tiptoed my way across, like, maybe I'm non-binary, maybe I'm like all these things. I tried out, I think, every label there is. And for me specifically, I had a lot of fear of being a trans man, because it seemed to me very definitive. It seemed to me of like I'm doing the opposite of what I'm supposed to be doing. Like, it felt like a huge leap. And kind of now looking back, all of it is a huge leap. No matter where you fall on that spectrum, everything is a huge leap. And going to one side or another isn't any more or less dangerous for you. And it's very hard to communicate these kind of experiences, like these subjective feelings that you've had. But I guess for me, I struggled with my own baggage of like being a man was unattainable. I thought for so long that it was unattainable. And for some reason, my brain had decided that landing on non-binary would be easier than landing on trans man. And it's not the case at all. But if you find that you need to put on different labels to see how you feel, that's totally okay. And it's hard to say my experience could translate to yours or could translate to anybody else's. But I think it's fairly universal to have uncertainty about where you're going to end up, or uncertainty about committing to something potentially permanent, or whatever. There really aren't a lot of rules, and it's very scary in that. I don't know if any of my word salad helped at all, but even if it helped in terms of like,
it did.
Uncertainty is okay. Uncertainty is allowed. You are allowed to be uncertain, and it doesn't make you any less of whatever or whoever you are. So
Yeah. Thank you. I relate a lot to most of that. I was raised Mormon and have been unpacking a lot of that, which is surprisingly involved in a lot of internal experience of gender and expression. Yeah, thank you. That helps to sort of hear someone else sort of relating similarly. Thank you.
Yeah, I did not grow up conservative, so I think that puts me in a very different position. But I kind of did. It's funny, like Ben and I kind of crossed paths and then went back the other direction, because I at first was like, I'm a trans man. I mean, I was like 15 or whatever, so I guess maybe I didn't really think of it in exactly those terms. But I at first interpreted my feelings of dysphoria as being like, I am definitely like a trans boy or trans mask or whatever. And then it was like kind of what Ben was saying. I was very clear that I was not a woman. And then when I tried out the role of being a trans man, I was like, oh, actually, I'm not that either. Like, nope. And it has been a long process of like, okay, yes, I am trans masculine because I want to take hormones, and I did take hormones, and I'm like, okay, so do I want top surgery or do I not? Do I want to work on deepening my voice, or am I okay with it being more androgynous? So and like for me, the feeling of I am whatever, for a long time, I was like, I am genderqueer. And I took on that label because it felt to me like I didn't really feel like my gender was fluid, but genderqueer kind of opens up the possibility of, it means that I can dress however I want. It means that I can look however I want. Like, do you know what non-binary means? It means I am not going to be tied down to any one presentation. And then now more recently, I identify as agender. Like, I don't think that I have one specific gender label. And I also have always bucked against the myopia of being like, oh, well, let me figure out like a complex gender label. Let me string several words together to describe the very specific feeling of gender that I have. I have always been more on the side of like, let me just pick a word that is going to sort of communicate the broad strokes, the broad idea, and then don't bother me about how I dress or whatever. Like, that's kind of been my position. So, and the great thing is that with a lot of this stuff, you can try things and then come back off of it. Like, yeah, you could try to identify as a man and then come off of it, or you could take testosterone for a short time and probably not have any permanent effects if you only do it for like a month or two. So that's kind of the good thing about this stuff, is that you don't have to commit, and there is totally this space to explore how you're feeling and like, yeah, let me see how this goes, or how does this go, and understanding that it's reversible, for the most part anyway. Obviously, like, don't dive in and get top surgery if you're still not sure. It took me like 8 years before I felt sure about whether or not I wanted top surgery. And if I had just gone for it when I was a teenager, I probably would be somewhat remorseful now. So, take that time. And I also like think that it's good to have a therapist, like, just generally speaking.
Definitely.
Maybe not.
Everyone should have a
Yeah.
therapist if you have access.
Yeah. Like, it can help you figure out, like, help you sort those feelings out. Cause like, I was working by myself, figuring out, do I want top surgery? How do I feel? Is this something that I need? Or is this just because other people are going to perceive me in such and such way? And then also witnessing other people being like, I've had top surgery and I still get misgendered as female, and I'm really frustrated. And I was like, okay, so this is not even going to solve the problem of me being misgendered. So I think that kind of solidified it during quarantine for me. But it would have been much better if I had had a professional who could help me sort those feelings out and help me figure out where the discomfort was coming from and everything. But yeah, feel free to experiment on things. And, there's the classic, I'm going to go to Starbucks and give them a name that I'm trying out moment, and just, enjoy that too. Like, let it be fun. Don't let it be like this dour, oh my God, I have all this anxiety about finding my exact label thing, because you don't even really need one.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's funny you talk about top surgery. I had a consult this morning,
Nice.
which went well.
Oh,
which was cool.
congrats.
That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. That's part of the follow-up question. Just a brief one. What do you do when you start talking to like professionals and they need your information? And maybe like, I'm not entirely sure on the label I use personally, but what do I do when I'm talking to professionals and filling out paperwork? Like, how do a lot of people handle that?
I mean, Ben, you're on the
yeah,
medical
this
side.
is a
You might
question
know
for
more.
you because, well, no, but it's easy for me as a person who's binary because there's almost always a label for me to use. So this might be a better question for you when there isn't a label for somebody to use.
Yeah. I think when I first got hormone treatment, I was going the informed consent route. I like drove 3 hours to the nearest informed consent clinic that I knew of. And I think I just sort of said, like, yeah, I don't think I articulated I'm non-binary. I think I just said, like, as far as the results of these hormones, I think the exact phrase I used was, I'm going for something more middle of the road. But I have mostly gone the informed consent route, and I have not sought like surgery. So, and like, it depends too if you're trying to get insurance involved, because sometimes insurance will require you to, have been on hormones for a certain amount of time, or like sometimes they will be resistant to covering it if you say that you're non-binary. And this is especially true. I mean, I know that you're in the US, but this is especially true in countries with national healthcare services. Yeah, so, and I will say that I personally don't feel very compelled to be 100% honest if it means that I could get denied medical care. Like, it's for the same reasons that I'm not trying to get an autism diagnosis. Like, I don't need to be denied medical care because they're like, you're autistic and you can't make choices for yourself. Like, the doctor doesn't really need to know that I'm non-binary. They just need to know that I want my voice to be deeper and that I understand the ramifications to my fertility. And like, that's really we don't really need to talk about the psychology of it all, because the doctor is not a psychologist, and they just need to be on the same page with me about the physical impact of the medicine that they're prescribing me. or this whatever the surgical procedure, whatever it is. So I would say keep it business with medical
Yeah.
professionals who might gatekeep you.
Yeah, you got to play the game a little bit, unfortunately. And I don't know what part of Arizona you're in, and you don't need to dox yourself online, but because I had my top surgery in Arizona, and so I very well might know the professionals you're working with. Also, because I went to med school in Arizona, so I might know the professionals on your team just from working in that area. So if you're, I don't know if you're on Twitter or anything, or where we can DM if you have any more like specific questions about people in your area that I might know. But yeah, you have to play the game a little bit, but and don't feel like you have to disclose every possible thing. You can very easily say the right things to get you care, and to get you letters and stuff. And even if I know you've said you already have a diagnosis of gender dysphoria, but even I'm loving the new, I guess it's not a new ICD-10 code, but being able to have a diagnosis of gender incongruence is now becoming more common. And so that's a route where and it might be limiting for coverage of certain procedures to use that, but for people who don't feel comfortable using a label of gender dysphoria, that's an option now too, that people can have gender incongruence as a diagnosis. But yeah, I wish I could say more than play the game, but
yeah.
But Lux is right about all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful. Protos needs over pleasing people with labels. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your call, Quinn.
Thank you, guys.
All right, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye. Okie dokie. Whew. So we do have a couple more calls in. Do we think that we should go ahead and close the lines and get these next 3 calls and then do super chats? All right.
Yeah,
so
I think that's a good plan.
We're closing the lines now. If you didn't get in today, call back next week. You'll have Josie and Ben next week. Don't forget to get your $5 super chats in, and you can vote hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Ben. Who do you think is the cooler one? Who did the better arguments or whatever? Which one do you want to have to defend the position that cereal is soup? Because I think that's kind of what's winning in this poll.
Is that the one that...
It's going to be either cereal is soup or pineapple is the best pizza topping. So you can still vote on that
for
poll.
Either. So let's see.
Yes.
Let's see what we got.
All right. So next we're going to take Kitty Tick She They from Oregon wants to ask me a question. Hello, Kitty. How are you?
Hello. Doing well. How about yourself?
Doing super good. I wish I had made myself tea, but that's okay. I just have water. It's all right. I'll live.
So shout out to Quinn because I'm a former Arizonan and I was raised Mormon, and so I kind of understand a little bit about where they're coming from. Something they might want to think about as a former. I've noticed as a former Mormon along my journey is I tend to really question each decision I make now. I feel like it's because I felt so betrayed by the church when I finally left that now I question a lot of the decisions before I step forward. And so it might slow you down, but you'll always feel sure about it.
Yeah. It is super weird being non-binary, especially like being in relatively conservative areas. Like I live in a relatively liberal part of Kansas, and then I go out of that little tiny bubble and suddenly it's like, oh my God, there are people wearing t-shirts that say, I'm voting for the felon. And it's like, oh my God, I'm just head in my hands at a certain point. Yeah. And it's weird too, like that there's no, I think the thing that I've struggled with the most in my social transition is that there's no role for non-binary people to transition into. Like it's a little bit easier for binary trans people, because you're just like, okay, I'm at point A and I'm trying to get to point B, and that's an idea that people are familiar with. Like, they're familiar with what a woman is. But yeah, trying to assert yourself and create a new social space, I think, has been one of the most difficult things for me. And it's, we take the good with the bad. It's amusing sometimes. I worked retail for a long time, and one time I had someone who was like stumbling over whether to say sir or ma'am, and they went with captain, and I was like, hell yeah, that's awesome. Like, I savor the confusion sometimes, and if it lands somewhere cool, I'm like appreciative of that. That doesn't make it easier to decide like, what bathroom am I using today? Like, it was nice to have the option before they passed the law here in Kansas to be like, well, I have my hair up and I'm wearing a baggy hoodie today, so I should probably use the men's bathroom because that'll be the least amount of issues in my life. And now I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and take my hair down before I go into the female restroom, as is legally required of me to do. So I do think it's amusing in some ways and it's fun in a lot of ways, but in this present climate, like, I find that it's more stressful. I don't know if you have had a similar experience where maybe it was more fun like 5 years ago and now it's like less fun.
Well, I mean, for me, like, my journey kind of in some ways started back when I was 21, because one of my friends helped me do a really intense cross-dressing for Halloween. And I really enjoyed when men got, like, double took when they came up to give me a drink or something. And that was, like, kind of the first step of, like, oh, this is kind of fun, making people uncomfortable. And that was just the very beginning of it. And then by the time I was 26, I was like openly gender fluid. And I kind of just didn't care what people thought, but it was fun that people were confused. And that was like 9 years ago. But now people aren't confused. They're just mad.
Yeah. That's the struggle for sure. Like, for people to have this reflexive reaction. I mean, and like my response to this, I mean, to be fair, because I have been off of hormones for a bit, and because of how I choose to wear my hair and I choose to dress more like comfortable, like I'm not binding, I'm not really like trying to look masculine. A lot of the time I am perceived as female, I think. And so it's like a similar position. You're not dealing with so much people being angry as you are dealing with people like the normal background level of like, I feel like I should start carrying a weapon with me, because people feel this permissiveness to be like creepy and all those kind of things. And like, I am relatively small. I'm trying to get more muscular, and like I think that looking more muscular is probably going to be a deterrent in and of itself too. So like, how, in terms of how to deal with being a targeted gender, whether it's specifically whether I look trans or whether it's just that background radiation. What is it in the Barbie movie? She's like, yeah, it's Ken. He's like, yeah, it's great, and there's no undercurrent of violence. And Barbie's like, there's a definite undercurrent of violence for me. I laughed so hard because it's so relatable. It's so true. Just, yeah, there's a background radiation of like potential violence that you're dealing with. And like, my response to that, I think it's a justified anxiety, like a justified fear. So because I've thought that through and I've looked at the statistics and all this, I'm like, okay, well, I think that the strategy to assuage my anxiety and a strategy for prevention is like, yeah, how am I going to prevent this? Am I going to like get a concealed carry license? Am I going to make sure I'm always carrying a pepper spray? And I do. I keep pepper spray on my keys at all times. I've even thought, if I'm moving up to the Pacific Northwest, as you know, and I'm like, I would love to go hiking, but it's dangerous to do that. So how am I going to navigate that safely? Should I get a dog, like, so that I can teach it to like bark at people? Yeah, I think that that's a shared difficulty with trans people and with women and like to be fair, obviously Ben is like a binary trans man, but it's not as though we don't all share the experience of going through a phase where we're gender ambiguous. Like there's this assumption that there's an assumption that, oh, trans men, as soon as you go on T, boom, there's the beard and you just are passing and everything's perfect and you have all the male privilege. But realistically, that's not the case for most trans men, I would say, or at least not immediately. So yeah, I don't know. Ben, do you have any tips and tricks for how to navigate being in that vulnerable spot?
It's hard. And it depends on your circumstances. For me, I had my kind of like early transition phase during med school because like I came out as trans after my first year of med school, and so that second year it was like people had already met me as a woman, and now I was kind of flipping it on its head, and I didn't get on hormones until like a year after that. So I had that period of where I had changed the way I look. I had changed the name I was going by. I changed the pronouns I was going by and had to reintroduce myself to everybody that I went to school with. And I had particular issues with my faculty who did not really seem super receptive. And for context, you'd understand this being at a school in Arizona that was a private institution in Arizona, very heavily Mormon, very heavily conservative. And so I was very forward and very aggressive with how I handled it, but that was my own personal preference. I think my favorite story was I started wearing a pin with my pronouns on it, and of course people either didn't see it or didn't care about it. So then I wore a bigger pin with the pronouns on it, so it was more obvious. And then that, of course, wasn't noticed. So then I wore a whole T-shirt with the pronouns on it, very big letters, like all across the chest. And then finally, my last step of that was I wore a shirt that said "It's a boy" on it to class, because I was like, I'm going to use this against them, because in our society, it's compulsory that if somebody is pregnant or expecting a baby or had a baby, you ask them about it and you talk about it. So like, wear that shirt, and now it's a compulsory conversation topic. They're going to ask you, and then you say, it's me, I'm the boy. And then they have to confront the issue because you've talked about it in person. So it's you have to be very comfortable with trolling people if you're going to do something like that. Sometimes it's funny to take the troll route. But otherwise, that's the best story I have about being in the between. Otherwise, I just took strategies to make my body look in a certain way. Like using illusions is very powerful. Because unfortunately, society expects you to have a certain body type if you are a certain gender, and you can kind of make it seem like certain problem areas aren't problem areas as much. And so like baggy clothes are really nice, especially for people who are trans masc. Utilizing certain like silhouettes of clothing to kind of draw attention to certain areas or not others. Same thing with fabric patterns can do that. I know for me, part of my bodybuilding strategy is focusing very heavily on shoulders, because if you make the shoulders bigger, it makes the hips look smaller, even if the hips didn't change much at all.
Dorito shape.
So yeah, if you just intensify that Dorito shape, then it makes the other parts not look as big. So, and those are a few strategies that I would say, but my strategies are maybe a bit more relevant to trans masc folks. Maybe Arden or Josie have some insight on how to like use illusions for the other way,
and that's like operating under the assumption that we're trying to
that
pass
you want to, yeah, and that's totally different. Like
being non-binary.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I defer to Lux about that particular side, because I just don't have as much experience. that side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm one of those people that's pretty. I'm pretty easy to clock on one level or another. I have a very deep voice. I'm over 6 feet. But I also I'm very thin, so I have like little definitive boobs on me, and I usually wear dresses or women's clothes, and so people will like start treating me one way and then have to treat me another way right after I talk, and it's just a thing. But I kind of just roll with it. Most people in the town just kind of leave me alone because I don't make a deal out of it. If you treat me like a man, I just let you treat me like a man that day.
I think giving up on caring has been so good for me. And like, I know that not everybody has this option. Some people have like a very intense social dysphoria, and I used to. And it has just been over the last like 4 years or so that have been just like, I don't care. I know what I am. I don't really need validation from random strangers who I'm never going to talk to you again, or like whatever's going to make this go by easier. I don't care anymore. Which is kind of great. I think like, which functionally means that I'm basically an any/all pronouns person in practicality. It's like, I do have my preferences, but in reality, I'm just not going to correct people. It's just not a big deal to me anymore. Unless it's like a danger situation, and then I'll be like, is that a problem, sir? Like, do we have an issue? Do you want to play a game called How Many Weapons Is It Carrying right now? That's my response to the situation is like, I'm just going to be prepared for anything that could happen, and hope that nothing bad happens. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, I think is the phrase.
Yeah, it's hope for the best, plan for the worst.
Yep. So that's pretty much all I got anyway.
Well, thank you guys for your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you for calling in,
thanks
Katy.
for
We
calling
appreciate
in.
you. And hope that you have a good rest of your day. Yeah, and I'm sure I'll chat with you again at some point. So, toodaloo.
Yep. Okay. Bye.
Bye. All right. We had a potential spicy caller who was too impatient to
Oh man.
to wait for us to get around to them. So it's possible that this was a troll. I would kind of enjoy that sometimes though, but that's the thing about trolls is they're not patient. Like, listen, there's other people in front of you in the line. Be patient and then we can get the smackdown going. Whatever.
Yeah.
Don't forget, everybody, it's not too late for you to hit the like button if you haven't done that already. $5 super chats, we will read them out at the end. And vote for hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Ben. And the loser has to do a punishment of justifying why cereal is soup, I think is what is going to end up being the indefensible position here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So last caller, and then if we don't get, I think we said we were closing the lines, so that'll be the last call for today, and then we'll get into the super chat. So, this is this 7? It's either 7 or V. She/her from Georgia. Hello, welcome. Please tell us what your name is.
My name is 7. You got it right the first time.
That's hella legit. I love that. That's awesome.
That is super cool.
My last name is Roman numerals. It's well. I won't say it online, but yeah,
that's cool as hell.
But that's super creative.
7.
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. You get to choose your name, so why not?
Yeah, why not do something hella cool? That's awesome. Well, what would you like to talk about with us today?
So I wanted to I have a ton of questions, but the one I wanted to ask to try to spice it up a bit is a little bit about my experience here in Georgia and being part of the LGBTQ community. I'm only 2 years transitioned. I'm 36. So I'm a little bit older, but I pass well. I look like I'm in my 20s, and guys tend to like me quite a bit. So on dating apps and things like that, it usually goes pretty well, but they do not read their bios or my bio. So my big question is that being part of the LGBTQ community good for trans people, especially when it is viewed from the outside perspective as a very specifically sexual group?
Are you going to jump in, Ben? It looked like you unmuted.
Oh, no. I was just thinking. You go for it first.
Yeah, so I do think that probably there are some people for whom, well, it's like the question is, do people assume that being trans is inherently sexualized because of our relationship to more broadly like queer activism? Or is it because people have a difficult time thinking about what a gender transition means without having a lot of curiosity and questions about the sexual aspect of it? And like, I think it would be silly for any of us to say that there isn't a sexual aspect to it. Like, if you are an adult and you are not asexual and you transition, there is obviously a sexual component to it. Your desires change, or like how you want people to interact with your body is different, or like
Fair.
how you want to use things is different, or not. Um, and yeah, so I think that like there is, to be fair, a component to it that is obviously like sexual. And if you're dating, that's part of it too. People are going to be curious, like, how do you want me to interact with your body? Do you want me to do this or not? Like, is the mouth feel different? The classic ContraPoints callback. So yeah, I, I I wonder sometimes if it's worth it to consider like what conservatives think of us in that way, because like obviously there's that component to it, and then there's also the fact that I think no matter what, sometimes they project that, like, their curiosity about our sexual lives, they project that onto us and then start making broad um, ascriptions to us that we are doing it for a sexual reason. I mean, it's, the entire Blanchard thing of autogynephilia is like, well, certainly these trans women who are transitioning and they look fuckable to me, they're doing it because they are sexually attracted to themselves or whatever. Like, they're doing it for an explicitly sexual reason. So yeah, I'm not sure if it's our affiliation with other queer people that is doing that so much as it is the sexual curiosity of people outside the community, and like the fact that that is a very interesting part of a trans person's life, and like it's an interesting part of anyone's life, I'm sure. I mean, if you keep things spicy, but yeah, and I do think that the connection is sort of inextricable between like more broadly lesbian, gay, bi communities and trans people, because we all are transgressing our gender role. Like, even being a gay man who is cisgender, you are like, suddenly there's questions of like, are you a top or a bottom? Like, oh, are you effeminate? Like, that immediately calls into question whether whether you're following the ascribed gender role. And I mean, I'm sure that we all remember back when it was very common for people to call Hillary Clinton a lesbian just because she's a woman in a masculine field, even though she's been married to a man since I think my entire life, more than my entire life. Uh, it's just because she is transgressing the role of a female by being a powerful working woman in politics. So uh, to me, I think that gender transgression is fundamentally shared by queer people and trans people both. So I don't even know if it's possible to remove that association at this point.
It's become difficult, though. My experience dating guys in particular, I'm bisexual, so I try to date both, but women, for whatever reason, they see my profiles. I'm assuming that they're more into like natural born women, which is sad, but whatever.
I think women
So it's
courting
been
is
mostly
hard in
guys.
general.
Yeah. And yeah, guys on dating apps and talking to them on the phone, most of them don't know I'm trans until I tell them. And as soon as I tell them, it immediately gets sexual. Immediately. And the things that they say to me, I think, are things that they would not say to women. And I remember I had a boyfriend for a while that when we first started talking to each other, I inevitably told him. I tried to tell them early in, but I told him. And then he started sending me all of these like Facebook not messages, but like memes and stuff about like sex this and sex that, and like it almost immediately became sexual. And I remember I had to like talk to him, look, the T in LGBTQ is about how we identify as an individual. It has nothing to do with our sexuality. And for all you know, I could be asexual. And it might be my location. I do live in Georgia. I know it's the South. I know that men are kind of just a little bit different down here, but it's troubling because they don't treat me that way until they know. And I don't know how to get that to stop.
Yeah, and I don't know, honestly, I don't know how you could, because it's a systemic problem in how people are socialized, unfortunately. And a lot of it too, I think we're all in agreement that like including gender diverse people along with like sexual minorities is helpful in terms of like being a subculture of society. We definitely have similar cultural norms across the trans community and across like many sexual minorities. And I think part of this goes along with a lot of the differences I've seen amongst dating culture between like cis het dating culture and like queer dating culture, in that I think once you allow for a lot more variability in the way people act and the way people like operate under those contexts, you can't make assumptions. Like we take away the ability to make any assumptions about your partner or multiple partners or no partners. And our society has kind of conditioned cis het dating relationships to be all about assumptions. Like you don't ask what your role is in the bedroom. You know what your role is. You know who you're attracted to. You know all these things already. And so you kind of have a maladapted way of like engaging with your partner because you were just taught to make assumptions. And so it's hard to kind of break free of that and say, oh, I have to ask these things. I have to engage with my partner and find out if we're compatible beyond I think you're hot and our bodies are like fit together in a certain way. And so I can see where it throws people off. You have the other side that we talk a lot about with the fetishization of trans people, and that's unfortunate. And I know a lot of us don't want to be seen as sex objects. And I think when you have such maladapted abilities to communicate with a partner, and you have this side of humans who, many of them, you know, there's questions of how many people would prefer to be in a gay relationship, but are like scared enough to not identify as that, or if people like there's a lot of variables here for individuals to say why they're acting certain ways in those contexts. Doesn't make any of it okay. Doesn't mean that they should be doing that. But I think you can't really change that whole system. But what we can do, hopefully, find some people that are willing to talk about what they're looking for in a relationship. And I know people in more queer spaces oftentimes are willing to say, hey, what are you comfortable with? What are you looking for in a relationship? Even the conversation of one partner or multiple partners, like that's a big one that queer people are more often to ask each other than cishet people. And so I think navigating those spaces and finding people that are comfortable having the questions early, really getting to know if you're compatible or not is a challenge that we have, especially if we're branching out into cishet dating websites or dating spaces. That can be a bit of a cultural clash. And yeah, I think that clash sometimes can unleash some very inappropriate behaviors. And I'm sorry that you're struggling with this, and I feel bad that I've had experiences like that. I'm sure other people in this community have too, and it's not okay. I wish we didn't have to go through that, to even get to those people that are better dating partners. So I wish I had some better advice as far as like where to go for better experiences or like how to approach that. Unfortunately, I don't know if there's a way to really change that culture.
Yeah, I wonder if part of it too is that if a guy hits you up on a dating app, like if I think that there's a possibility that if he thinks you're a cis girl initially, then there's an assumption that he's going to try to date you. But when he learns that you're trans, it's like the idea of dating you goes out the window. And then he's
Yeah.
like, oh, well, I'm just going to cut through all of this and go straight to the sex because obviously I would never be seen in public with a trans person on my arm.
Yeah.
Like, I
That's
think
like
that
half
might
of
be part
them.
of it too. Yeah. So I don't know. I think the thing that I would do is I would make like the first profile picture that is like the default one, put like a trans flag in that or something. I mean, obviously it's not like necessarily how we want to present ourselves, like I'm a trans girl or whatever, but it could at least bypass the part of the conversation where you're like, maybe this person is actually interested in me as a person. Oh no, it turns out he's just interested in me for these other like things that I can provide. Because that is, yeah. And I mean, it is also just like an experience of being a woman to be like sexualized and disrespected. But I think that there is a permissiveness that a lot of cishet people feel to be less respectful when they find out that you're trans, in a way that they, even if they're trying to be a good Southern gentleman or whatever, trying to find their lady and somebody to go to the dance with or whatever. I don't know. I tried to come up with something offensively Southern and then it just escaped me.
Hoedown.
But the hoedown, yeah, exactly. Yeah. The square dance or whatever. Yeah, I think that there is some degree to which they just don't feel the need to be respectful anymore once they realize like that you're trans. And there's this assumption that it's sort of all you're good for is being like a sexual outlet for their curiosity and for them to test the waters of their homophobia or whatever. So I think the only preventative method you can take, because let's be real, these boys do not read the bio, is just to put something in your picture.
Yeah, I agree. I've considered it in the past. I like living as a woman. It's part of it for me. It's very bi-gendered, I guess, for me. And just having to talk about it is something I prefer to do. Similar to, like if another girl like can't have kids, they probably don't put that in their bio or put a picture up behind them on a profile picture. It's a
I'm
conversation for
infertile.
later. Yeah,
Just a banner.
it feels weird that I have to do that, and I get
No, it's
the
unfair.
reasoning behind why it would be safe, but or it gets good. I don't know, the perspective that men have when they think of you as a woman almost goes out the window as if you're no longer a woman. And it's almost like a red flag for me that I like to have, so I know to ditch them out sooner versus getting love bombed and tricked into a situation, which I've had in the past as well. So it's like a give and take. And that's, I guess, why I had the initial question of the being labeled within that community, which is outwardly viewed as a very sexually driven community. This is whom you love. This is what you like. Doesn't seem to gel or vibe with an identifier like being trans. And that's odd to me that we are part of a community that is specifically sexually driven. Well, I guess not specifically, but again, outwardly perspective, it seems to be the case that, and we can't change their minds, but here we are. So I don't
I
really
honestly
know how
think
to
that they
navigate
shoved us
that.
in the group together too. Like, I think even originally, I don't think it was our idea to be like, let's be buddies with the gays. And like, there's plenty of gay people who are cisgender and who are transphobic. So like I think this is we've just been sort of shoved into a box together, and I don't know how much control we have over this outward perception because it wasn't our idea in the first place. But all we can do is try to navigate it safely, and we have to make those tough choices of, do I navigate this in a one-on-one conversation and try to suss out whether this person is safe? If I announce that I'm trans, then any old person on this dating website now knows that I'm trans, and being in Georgia obviously is not ideal, probably, in terms of places that you could potentially be. But I don't think there's a great way to go forward with it except to be extremely discerning on an individual basis, pretty much.
Well, cool. Thank you for your thoughts. That is helpful.
Yeah. Thank you for calling in. We appreciate you, Seven. And I love your cool name
And
again.
I will forever be in love with how various people choose their names and what they end up with. Like, some people have creativity that I wish I had. But yeah, your name is awesome.
Oh, thank you. You'll see me again. I'll call back. I have kids too, and I have tons of questions, but you guys want to get to super chats, but I get that.
Yes, we appreciate you calling, and look forward to chatting with you again sometime. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, guys. Bye.
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 Okay. We're about to enter the Thunderdome. It's time for Super Chat. All right, everybody.
Also, just if I seem a little distracted, the queen of the house is demanding I play with her laser pointer. So this is the only way to keep her from like knocking everything over on my desk. So if I'm distracted, that is why. I am just snack bitch and laser pointer bitch.
That's okay. We might have to. I might have to go get my cat so that we can have like a. If you vote for that cat, then that also is a vote for me. Or similarly with Ben, if you want to bring your cat on.
What's your cat's name?
His name is Mitternacht, the German word for midnight, because he's black cat. Yeah.
Mine is Sushi. She will force herself onto the stream or she won't, but she doesn't like to be picked up. So I will not be holding her. But if she shows up, she will show up on my desk somewhere. So we will
My cat also doesn't like to be picked up, but I'm stronger than him. So that's how that usually goes down. Okay.
That's fair.
Let's start.
Who's
with
going
10 pounds. I'll just go. Sean Isherwood, thank you. Oh no. If 2 to the x power read, 2 to the x. Okay, got it. If and 3 to the x are both integers, nobody knows whether x has to be an integer too. This has been an open problem for decades. I'm not sure whether I've shared this one here before. Thank you. I definitely understood all of those words.
That's an interesting debate. I want to look into that. Because
I'm glad that someone understood.
Oh god, I just realized this is Team Katy and Team Aron. Nobody said anything.
No. Oh no, you got it wrong. You got to fix it.
Totally not even close to right. Okay, hold on.
And that's an old one too, because Katy hasn't been on in a bit.
Yeah.
Classics. Yeah, don't forget, $5 super chats, we're reading them, and you can vote with your hashtag Team Lux or hashtag Team Ben. The loser has to defend the position that cereal is soup. Okay.
5 pounds from Jack. Team Lux. And I don't. Yeah. I can't necessarily support for Team Lux, but your hair in the picture is purple and it's really cool. So
I love the
I'll
glasses
give you a pass.
too. Super cute. 1999 from Narcissa says, I don't know how to donate without creating super chat. I think that there is some function that's like super sticker or super thanks. But regardless, we appreciate you, and you can always just say no comment, and we will understand.
Yeah, thank you.
That you mean to support the channel. Thank you.
Also, if you don't want to do super chats, super stickers I can't put up on the screen. Like, our system just doesn't recognize super stickers exist. But you can do like super comments. Or they're like highlighted comments or something like that after the fact. Those also help the show. So there are options out there.
Heck yeah.
Many, many options.
5 pounds from Scott Hunter says, I am a middle-aged white hetero cis male and learned so much from this show. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that we're here to educate. It's one of the best things about doing the show.
20 Canadian from David Haxor. On another show, a host said dimorphic brain structures are always indicative of a trans person's expressed gender. 1, have you heard of this before? 2, if true, doesn't that make gender biological, trans rights, or human rights? I don't know. I don't know what the specific claim was or what the specific argument was, and I don't want to argue out of context or something I don't know their full position on. I have not heard this. I think I've heard this particular position before, but I don't want to. Again, I don't want to straw man the position of somebody who's not on the show with us right now.
I don't even know if any of us have taken this position. It might have just been a misunderstanding or a misspeak on one of our parts, because like the information about brain structures, like some studies seem to find a difference and most studies seem to not find a difference. And are we looking at pre-transition brains or brains that have already been on hormones for a few years? Like there are just so many variables, and we have not found like a consistent sexually dimorphic brain structure.
Yeah, and is this thing maybe similar to bone structure, where like maybe there's a difference that many people of a certain gender have certain traits, but not everybody. Like that, there's a lot of variables here. I would agree.
20 pounds from Jackie Greenland says, late in this week, but apparently there is some form of competition, given that I flipped a coin and hashtag Team Lux. Beyond that, nothing interesting to say. The coin
Won by a
is in my favor.
Coin toss.
I know.
$19.99 from Narcissa. Thank you for the donation. And no comment listed here. But thank you again. We appreciate it.
Also, Narcissa commented in the chat and said we always pronounce her name wrong, and it's Narcissa. She said she doesn't care.
My apologies.
You know, I would like to get it right. Thank you.
No, we want to get your name right. Yeah. We apologize.
We appreciate you.
We'll get that right. $28.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I guess it's yours to read.
$20 from YouTuber Grudge says, I broke my Dr. Venus's go-go juice mug, so hashtag Team Ben. Am I missing context here?
Yeah, actually, I should use my mug because it's super cool. I'll grab it the next time you read one. But it was from our little like mug. Yeah,
we had a mug merch competition last Christmas. Yeah, and we're gonna do one again. I think everyone who shows up to the show will get a mug design and will compete, and like whoever sells the most, that design gets to live on for the year. I think is kind of the idea.
That's cool.
Mine's gonna have a stupid kidney pun on it. I'm gonna start working on my design in advance so it looks the best. $10 from Nikki D. Takis has become a go-to show for me. I look forward to it each week. Thumbs up. We love that. We love being a go-to show. And even though the other shows on the line are great too, this one's the best. So you should prioritize ours. And with that, I'm going to grab my mug so I can show it off.
And I will read the next super chat and vamp as necessary. Canadian $5 from Aaron says, hashtag Team Lux. I want to see Ben defend questionable food choices. Yes. Oh, so I know that Josie was talking about wanting to put her coconuts thing on a shirt, but it would be perfect if Josie's coconut thing goes on a mug for the competition for the Christmas.
Yes.
That would be a lot of fun, I think.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, and Ben, I'm back, and and I'm gonna put. Oh, it's green. I've got a green screen, so it's like the void now.
Oh no!
But it's green. But it says Dr. Penis's Go-Go Juice, and in honor of the Go-Go Juice, I'm gonna put some of my energy drink into the mug. So, because that's what it's obviously a reference to, is the fact that I'm a caffeine addict. So here we go. We got that. So $19.99. Sorry, I gave you the extra cent from Narcissa. Lux for the win. And, I thought we were cool. I thought we were friends, Narcissa, but I guess not. That's fine.
$5 from Caitlyn Hebert. Thank you. Says everyone deserves healthcare as a right. We wouldn't hold necessary care from those who rely on the state, so we shouldn't treat gender affirming care any different. Hashtag Team Lux. Thank you. And yes, of course, we agree. Why would you withhold healthcare just because people are trans?
Yeah. $5 from Cluckenvar. Do OTC testosterone supplements actually do anything for cis or trans people? Hashtag Dr. Dungeon Daddy. I appreciate the fun names for me. That's actually, a lot of people call me Dr. Dungeon Daddy, like in my D&D groups, and it's funny, but the supplements really don't help in ways that you would want them to, and they can have some extra side effects of other things that you don't want to happen, because unfortunately our supplement industry is very poorly regulated and they can get away with a lot of garbage. So I don't recommend using any over-the-counter testosterone supplements. In fact, anything related to testosterone, I do not think should be over-the-counter, not because I don't think it should be accessible, but because it can be very dangerous. Whereas I know there's progesterone-based birth controls that are over-the-counter. Progesterone is much safer than estrogen and testosterone, particularly for people with other medical problems. So if you have questions about supplements or things that you should be taking, you should talk to a healthcare professional that knows you and knows your history and can give you some advice on that. But generally, I would avoid over-the-counter supplements unless you have somebody monitoring them and can verify safety and all that.
Hashtag this is not medical advice.
But yeah. And that's but something else I can say, something that does help with testosterone though is exercise. So if you're able to exercise, you do get some natural testosterone boost from that. And that is something I am comfortable and confident saying over the internet, and people taking that advice. So exercise within reason, please.
Yeah, within reason. Don't develop some anorexia athletica, please. $10 from Stephanie Helms says $5 to hashtag Team Luxander. Do Dr. Pepis has to defend Pepis?
Oh,
okay.
Pepis. It's because it sounds
Pepis.
kind of like penis, but it's Pepis.
I also just like to say Pepis.
Pepis is funny too.
It is.
Actually, it's a fun flashback because the Peepus meme has been a thing on my Twitch for a while, but I think the first time I was on the line with Matt on the hang up, I think that's where somebody had mentioned Peepus in a super chat, and so I had to defend Peepus on my first time on a show with Matt, and that was a fun time.
That does seem like it would be fun.
$4.99 from Louise Richardson. The Texas truck stop Buc-ee's is way ahead of the curve. Their restroom stalls are enclosed in brick walls on 3 sides, at least in the women's rooms. Yeah, I do like me some Buc-ee's. There are a few places I think that are doing this kind of thing now. It's great. It's great to see.
Yes, Buc-ee's bathrooms are the fucking best. So safe and private.
That's pretty cool.
Let's just go live in a Buc-ee's.
Yeah. When the zombie apocalypse comes, that's where we're going to hole up, is in a Buc-ee's.
We're all going to go to Buc-ee's. Yep.
Yeah. $5 from Ava Berry. Thank you so much. Could you please make your explanations of figuring out gender into a clip for the channel? They're so good, and I think could help so many people. We have been discussing posting more clips from this show, and we're working on it as the short answer. We have a backlog of 2 months worth of videos, so even if we had a slamming great segment today, it wouldn't come out for 2 months. And we're just trying to figure out what's best for the channel overall, since most of the people who subscribe here are here for the atheist shit. As a total percentage, most of them are not here for the trans stuff, so we're figuring it out.
$5 from Jax Takabi. Hashtag Team Lux. I will allow it this time.
I think this is so demoralizing when we the entirety of the text is just a vote for the other person.
Yeah.
Oh no.
Ben had that the worst back when, right after you passed your medical
Yeah.
test, everyone kept being like, "Congratulations, Ben!" # Team Katy. It was like a joke.
Yeah, no,
They
that
did it
was
so many times.
that was it became a joke, and then I think every show after that they did it just like because it was funny. It was the meme to like congratulate me and then give the vote to the other person. So
Tragic. $5 from Aliashana Silverboat. Thank you. Says, I told my doctor that I broke my arm in 2 places. They told me to stop going to those places. # Team Dr. Ben.
smart doctors,
Yeah.
keep them
Smart.
forever. I know it's a joke, but thank you for that vote. $5 from Jamnick 6. A doctor picks up a notepad, then removes an item from behind their ear. A thermometer? Oh shit! Some assholes got my pencil. Wow. Okay. # Team Dr. Bucksander. Do we allow fence sitters here? Do we allow fence sitters here?
Don't count it.
Nope.
I think
Doesn't count. Yep.
because it would just
Yeah,
go.
you gotta
It would
pick
just
one or the
increase our
other.
numbers by 1.
Yeah.
If we had something where it was like we're trying to get to a minimum number of votes, then perhaps we would count those. But for now, we're not doing it. 5. That list. I think that's Australian, but I thought that Australian dollars had an AUS in the front of them. Regardless, thank you for your units of commerce. From Darren McAuliffe says,
Units of commerce.
is that bye a Blackadder reference? # Team Lux. It's not intended to be. It's just me being a flaming F slur. I'm sorry. Bye.
Love it. See, I'm just taking the lower votes as a sign from the chat that they just want to hear my voice more on this show. So
True.
that's because that's what you're getting. $10 from Adrian Morgan. Exmo trans man here, transitioned as an adult. Mormonism made me so disconnected from my own identity that I didn't realize any of my gender stuff until I got out. Every journey is different. # Team Ben. Yep. And that's the truth. Every journey is very different, and you like take people's stories like with a grain of salt. Like just know that that's their experience, and it may be similar, it may not be. And just be the best you that you can.
True. £7 from Twitchy Witch 95 says, I'm curious about your thoughts on the impact of New Age / pagan spirituality on the gender criticals. I've rarely seen it discussed. Someone I know just shared a video in one of the Discord servers I'm in that kind of looks into this specific issue. I have not watched it yet, but there are people actively looking into the New Agey witch stuff and its relationship with the gender criticals. For the most part, I think the gender criticals that I've seen have been fairly secular. But I think that's partially just because the UK is like a fairly secular country, and that's where a lot of them are from.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, I can't go further in depth on that.
From...
I have to watch the video.
Yeah, and you could also call in if you want a longer discussion on it.
True.
That's a thing. $4.99 from Ben 9 Lives. Pineapple Pizza is my favorite. Vote hands down for Dr. Ben. Sorry, Luxy, maybe next time.
Shrug. I'll live.
I mean, there's more time. There's more time to have that debate as well. Don't call in about pineapple pizza though. Like that's find better topics.
That's not what we're not calling in for that.
Yeah.
$5
from Birdie B. Oh, sorry.
Oh, you're just gonna do 3 in a row?
Yeah. Sorry, I just got excited because he's my friend. So.
Oh, you can do it then. I just like the little frog butt in the picture, but you can go ahead.
I love that they picked you.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. This is my friend who. I'm really excited they were able to listen in on this. So, $5 from Birdie B. # Team Lux. Defend that ish Ben. Yeah. So they just want me to have to give a stupid argument. So.
Mm-hmm. That's how this works.
Thanks, Birdie.
$5 from Jax Takabe says, the banner for the 2 hosts is just pink and blue. Since non-binary is also trans, a more inclusive banner would be great. # Team Lux. I think part of the reason that it is that way is because that's the trans flag colors. So we have parts of the, like you can see right now that this is like pink in the background and then blue and then white. So I think that's the goal with that. I think incorporating the non-binary flag would be a graphic design nightmare because it shares exactly one color, and that's white. Like yellow, white, purple, and black would be a lot.
Yeah,
Unless you're just saying
and
we should
just
make
the
everything
combination.
purple, which I am in favor of.
Yeah, I mean, and as much as I love like the colors of both flags, like combining all of those colors into one like palette is awful, and we should not do that. $9.99 from Jason. Hashtag Team Lux. It was a hard decision because I admire you both immensely, but do you want to play a game to see how many weapons it's carrying? Way of stating your pronouns, rockstar level. I agree. You know,
True.
that's a really, really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lux has some good phrases that could easily be made into like merch. Just saying.
Yeah, that's true. I'm trying to convince my cat to come over here. I might have to actually pick him up and bring him over here. 5 Canadian from Aaron. Thank you so much. Saying you're infertile often brings out the men who don't want to wear condoms. Whatever we are, who we are is a so-called invitation to something. Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, that like that's the one thing that they're after is like, how can I have sex without wearing condoms? That would be crazy. I would, yeah, that's like an active deterrent to mentioning that you're infertile. That's like a third or fourth date thing, I guess. If things seem like they're starting to get serious.
Yeah, and I mean, like more reasons to keep the condoms and everything. We all love the fact that syphilis is on the rise in the U.S. right now. So
I think
use your
HIV is
protection.
also on the rise in the heterosexual community, or at least it has been.
Yeah,
We love that.
Yeah, lots of new guidelines now about testing for everything. It's great. Be safe, everybody. $5 from Cluckenvar. Shout out to all the comment section cowards who talk a big game but are too scared to call in. You know who you are. Hashtag Team Lux this time. You know, Cluckenvar doing the Lord's work in the chat for us. Yeah, call in cowards.
Call in cowards. It's true. $5 from Alyssa
That should be some merch.
Ljub.
That should be merch for us. It's call in cowards with
Call in
the number on it.
Yes.
I think
that's a great
we should
idea.
actually do that. That'd be hilarious.
Trans flag colors, absolutely.
Call in cowards. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for the $5 from Alyssa Silverboat. $5 more for Dr. Ben's response to a caller that may have given me some more insight into my own life. Thank you. Hashtag Team Dr. Ben. There we go. We're getting more votes for Dr. Ben.
Thanks. I wish I knew
while you read this
part this was.
Oh yeah, wish I knew what comment it was.
Know what I need to repeat. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna pick up my cat while you read this next one.
5 Australian from Raven Lunatic. How can I decide between two great hosts? I'll have to go with the cats. Hashtag Team Sushi. Yay! I'm getting a vote. And Sushi, Sushi has run off into who knows where. And there's a cat on the screen. My cat decided to want me to play with her, and then as soon as I kind of do, she's like, "No, I'm going to stop to eat." And then this has just been the cycle. So, but there's the other cat.
This is Mitternacht. He's a cute baby. He's giant, and we love him. Can we see your pretty green eyes? No?
Nope.
He's just like, I hate you so much. Except the thing is, I used to pick him up. I used to pick him up, and then I would like wait until he would be affectionate toward me, and then I would put him down. So now when I pick him up, he periodically just smashes his head against my face, like, I'm giving you love. Will you put me down now, please? Anyway, $5 from Panda. Hashtag Team Ben. Baby. I know you're so
narrowing
good.
the gap a little bit.
I definitely have that like disease that you get from cat bites that makes you obsessed with cats, because I can't look at that animal without wanting to just bury my face in his belly. Like it is like a
so
deep urge.
I know. I want to hold my cat, but where the fuck did she go? I don't know.
Okay, go on.
$5 from Stephanie Helms. Another one for hashtag Team Ben for the long Furby. Oh, I should show my long Furby. Okay, this is horrendous.
It's cursed. Long Furbies are so cursed.
Yeah. So I bought one, and I had it. It was at my desk at work, but then I brought it home because the people at work hate it more than the people on the internet. But this is Greg. This is Greg. He is my long Furby.
It's so much worse than most of the ones that I've seen.
I know. That's why I got this one, because he looks distressed. And
Yeah.
I needed him for residency because I was like, who is also distressed? Me. So I got my little distressed buddy who needs therapy. Greg needs therapy. But I had to give him
seen into the
name.
eternity.
Oh yeah, I had to give him the name Greg because I was like, what is the most boring name I could give this very distressed, cursed item? Obviously, Greg.
You're thinking of toxoplasmosis, Arden.
Yes, thank you. That's it. Oh my god.
10 pounds from Jack says, regarding male pregnancy, a local trans man recently had a child and made a children's book about it. It's called In My Daddy's Belly by Logan Brown. Both he and his book are pretty based. That's cool. I did not know that.
Awesome.
I mean, there's been several high-profile pregnant trans men, but it's cool that one of them is like turning this into a teaching experience for kids. That's cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Oh, we got another fence sitter here. $5 from Gemnick6. I have to mow my lawn when the show is done, so here's another super chat to keep the show going. Hey, we appreciate it. If you want to lengthen the show, that is how you do it. Hashtag Team Sushi Knocked, and I cannot support the fence sitting. Y'all gotta make decisions.
Typical binary person.
Typical.
Like, you have to choose. 5 Canadian. Thank you from Aaron again. Says hashtag Team Lux. It just makes sense. It's true. It's the correct position.
And
I
the
just got a
fact
new
that
Amazon
you have,
box,
like,
and he's like
dragon
scratching around
wings
in it right
behind
now.
you.
I know.
I just noticed,
and there's a dragon
that you
wing
have-
on my hoodie
yeah.
too.
Yeah. Okay. Lux should automatically win.
It's true. The dragon wins all.
5. Oh, we got another 5 from Birdie B. $5 from Birdie B. Hashtag Team Lux. Get Greg Prozac. Ben, he needs it. You're right. Greg needs some Prozac. And yeah, people really just want me to have to argue today.
It's
This
true.
is gonna be funny.
The results
It
are
was super
in.
close last week, so we
Results
kind
are
of went
in.
on for a little
Alright.
bit longer, but it's not close today.
Cool.
All right.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
oh no, the new thing that I made that I had up last week, it is not in here for some reason right now. Oh, you know why? Because
No.
I have a different file for when I'm self-hosting.
Oh.
Wait,
We
hold
also just
on.
got
Can
another super
I-
chat.
I think I can get this in while
we
we're
got
doing
another
the
super chat.
show. We're gonna vamp and I'm gonna talk to try to
What's
keep it going.
what's the new super chat? What did some?
It's
so we
somebody
can look at that.
voting for hashtag Team Mitternacht.
Okay,
Which is,
so
again, a
it's
vote
not
for me.
changing the outcome.
It's not changing
Yeah. So
anything
not
about the
change-
results of
not
this.
changing the outcome. Yeah.
You got to come on the show more,
Cool,
Ben. I think
yeah.
that might be part of it too. Is like the hosts that are more familiar to the chat.
Yeah.
Because like when I was
Yeah.
guest hosting, it was never even close when we were doing this voting. It was like every time I think I was on with Arden pretty much every time for quite a while. And every time Arden just like completely like swept every single time.
Yeah, and now that I can do it more, it's more feasible. Previously, when I was working, it was a bit harder. And I mean, I'm still working, but I'm working differently than I am than I was previously. Residency's a bitch. I'll get back to that eventually, but in the meantime, y'all are stuck with me a bit more and my opinions.
It's true. How tragic. And you haven't been on with Josie in a while, so getting to be on with her
Yeah,
next
which is
week
funny
gonna
because
be
I
cool.
actually I got to meet Josie in person probably a year ago or so because we live in a similar area right now, which I should try to see her again before I move. I can probably make that happen. Oh, my cat is right behind me. What are you doing? Want to come up? You want to come up? She's just staring at me. If she does come up, though, she will show up behind my monitor and fuck up the camera. That is what she does. So, but let me see if I can get her
Top tier.
up here. Come on the desk. Come on.
We got another
She's
super
like,
chat
no.
too.
She will only do things when I don't want her to do them. This is the cat way.
I think
Typical contrarianism.
I think I'm
Yeah.
ready.
Oh, and I think we got another super chat if we wanted to read that.
Yeah, we should
quickly.
acknowledge
here she
these
is.
two, even though it
Here
doesn't
she
change
is.
the result.
Oh, you can kind of see her tail shadow a little bit, but
Yeah, read the next ones. I have one more thing to do, and then
Okay.
we're ready to go.
I'm gonna stabilize my camera real quick because she is going to walk behind it. Sushi, come here. Sushi. Okay, now she's gonna jump off the desk. Okay. I don't know what she
Okay,
wants.
I don't think they're showing up on the screen, but Jamnik06 says, with a $5 super chat, fine, no more fence sitting. Hashtag Team Mitternacht in the voice of Agnes from Despicable Me. It's so fluffy. I would do that, but I haven't seen Despicable Me in like 10 years. I haven't seen it since like the first one just came out.
And then I see one after that says, read this to fill time, hashtag Team Ben from Darren McAuliffe again. So
Thank you,
it did
Darren.
fill time a little bit.
All right. We are going to...
Okay.
Timer is ready. Are you ready?
That's a long time for this argument. What's
2 minutes?
yeah.
I filled in 2 minutes of defending that football is the best sport in the world.
So I don't need to talk fast, is what we're saying. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? Cool. 3, 2, 1, go.
All right. So the argument today is cereal soup, and there are multiple ways people could take this depending on their definitions, but there is objectively one correct answer based on the definition of soup, which is, I had the specific dictionary definition here. Oh, here it is. Okay. Soup is a noun, according to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, a liquid food, especially with meat, fish, or vegetable stock as a base and often containing pieces of solid food. So seeing as it says especially with meat, fish, or vegetable stock does not mean it has to contain that, but those are examples of things that could be the liquid base with the pieces of solid food. So cereal often has milk, doesn't always, has milk with pieces of solid food. So many of the cereals you find at the grocery store are, I would say, solid in the fact that they are not liquids and not gases and not plasma. They are solids and milk is a liquid. So that would qualify it meeting criteria for a soup. Additionally, we have examples of cold soup. We have examples of hot soup. We also have examples of cold cereal and hot cereal. And when people engage in this debate, they often forget that porridge is also a soup, in that you have a liquid base, you have solid that is added to that, and those together form the soup, or in this case, the cereal. And you have in that category oatmeal, you have cream of wheat, you have grits would also be included. So instead of separating these out as cereal versus soup, we have soup as the big umbrella term, which can include cereal, your cold soups such as your gazpacho, even your cold noodles.
Time's up.
I didn't have enough time.
All right,
I didn't have
audience.
enough time. Dang.
Make sure you leave comments. Did Ben successfully defend the position? Is cereal soup? We would love to know.
And leave your suggestions for more goofy, indefensible positions so that we can add them to our list for next time. But yes, that is our show. So thank you, everybody. Actually, there was one more super chat. I just want to acknowledge and read it, and then we will close out here. JW Edgy with the $4.99 says, since coming out, my mom calls me her offspring, emphasis on off. Love her humor so much. Baby!
Hi.
Oh, what a cutie.
I know,
oh my God, my cat
is at the wrong time for me to snatch you
we
up.
get the flash. One moment and then go away. Wonderful. I'm glad that she made an appearance. So thank you, everybody, so much for joining us on the Transatlantic Call-In Show. We will be able to be seen next week with Josie and Ben at the same time. And if you want to, you can join the Patreon and join this cool list of all these neat people, get access to cool, secret-y, private stuff. And, we'll be here. We'll see you next time. The list gets longer and longer every time. Be one of the cool people on the Patreon.